Okay, systems thinking in EDU 599. Oh, how to come at this? I think it's an important topic. I discussed it at length last semester with EDU 631. Tanya may remember. I'm going to revisit it a bit, Tanya. I'm sorry, Kobe and Tanya, that I'm doing that to you, but it's going to be just a little bit different. I won't stay, well, it's going to be a little bit different. So I really came at it from three perspectives, trying to deduce what NELP really wanted accomplished here. I think this makes sense, and even if it doesn't make sense for the NELP standards, it does make sense as a practicing administrator. And for that reason, I'm very comfortable with where we're going to go here. So stick with me. We are on this standard, all right, to analyze, manage district-wide use of coherent and technologically appropriate systems. Analyze and manage. Those are the key action words for me. Analyze and manage. Analyze and manage what? Appropriate systems, curriculum, instruction, assessment, student services, instructional resources. That's what I tried to do with this. So, looking for a definition of what is systems thinking in education, I came across one which is not very generic. In fact, it goes right to technology, which is good. All right? In a moment, after I get through this, I'm going to go broader. I'm going to talk about systems in a broader, more generic sense. But let's start with systems thinking as it applies specifically to technology and teaching and learning. This comes from the Learning Council. Systems thinking is a management discipline. I love that word. It's a discipline that first observes discrete functions and interaction between components. In education, that would be the interactions amongst teachers, learners, administrators, digital content, and learning goals. Systems thinking then uses that data to derive a useful construct, a system that creates efficiency and utility for all. Sometimes this system is multiple systems of multiple functions. By the way, just as a bit of a test, in that statement up above, what is the data to which this writer refers? Read the sentence again. I'm sorry, read the passage again, and tell me what the data is. Staring you right in the face, right on the page. Shana?
Is it the interactions among teachers, learners, administrators, digital content, and learning goals?
Absolutely, very good, very good. I suppose, Shana, difficult to get your hands on, right? Quantifying that, interactions, you'd have to have some kind of good instrument to collect that data, but nevertheless, you answer the question correctly, and it kind of gives you different ideas of how different data can actually be. So with that in mind, what is happening right now, this will make sense. What's happening right now nationwide in the transition to digital by schools is considerable confusion, overlap, and inefficiency at the software and content level. Can any of you identify with that? Considerable confusion. A majority of tech transition construct by schools are piecemeal documents and a patchwork of apps. Many times these are wonderful but isolated islands of teacher-driven ingenuity with little or no overarching system tactics. It's time to have systems leadership. How many of you know maybe a fourth grade teacher who's exceptionally technologically literate, has all kinds of technology tools at her disposal, uses them in the classroom, gets good results, but with six sections of fourth grade in the building, she's the only one who uses them? Amanda's nodding her head there. Happens often. You've got these pioneers who are out there first, but it's not something that everyone does, all right? So it's time to have systems leadership. Today's school leaders, this is you, need to understand what it means to program a computer. Oh, that's a heavy lift. To harness an automatic technology workflow. I don't know if I agree with that, how to program a computer, but I do think that an intimate knowledge of how computers work and how technology and software works is extremely important. This is systems thinking and is at the core of what currently drives the economy. Being able to harness machines to do the heavy lifting of the institution is a very different reality than leaning only on people. Being able to harness machines to do the heavy lifting is a very different reality than leaning only on people. This does not mean teachers will be irrelevant. It means all school staff will be highly leveraged. You have to, well, I've told you before that I was in your position back in the 80s. And back in the 80s, we were just starting to put computers in the classroom and in our schools. We still use typewriters and telephones. And there were no computers in the classroom, no networks, no LANs, no WANs. And I remember going to planning meetings at BOCES where these fellas were there, they're primarily guys, nerdy guys, of course. They were primarily men who had been studying this for quite some time. And man, they were throwing around terminology that I had no idea, and I had to just keep my mouth shut and listen and learn. Now, I hope some of you are beyond that and do have a good working knowledge of hardware and software, networking, etc., because you're going to need to know that if you're going to be able to assert systems thinking on the technology that's being introduced into your building. Otherwise, you're just going to be whipped around by the minority, frankly.
Professor Rinaldi.
Please, and it's a Mr. Scott. But Chuck is fine. Go ahead, Scott.
So if you have a systems thinking mentality for technology, like technology is ever changing, I guess I'm assuming that's your system thinking, because how do you not strip the autonomy away from the teachers? So I have several staff members here that are like light years ahead of everyone when it comes to technology. One of them's like a tech integrator, but how do you not strip the autonomy if you're in a systems thinking when it comes to technology?
Because you find a balance, like we do in so many things in our job, Scott. And your point's very well taken, because I wouldn't want to do that. Systems thinking does not mean an autocracy. It doesn't mean that everything has to come from the top. But it does mean that you need to find a way to integrate the efforts of your pioneers out there into the building as a whole. To make software decisions, as we'll find in a moment, software decisions that are transferable from one teacher to another, from one class to another, operating systems that make sense for a variety of different platforms, hardware, all right, that can be used by many, has good user interface, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a role to play to keep those people moving forward, and in your planning efforts, make sure that you're doing the job with people like your tech director. Most of us have a tech director or tech integrator these days, right? Making sure that you work with that person on the other end. And that's where the tug comes, because it's been my experience that it will be the tech director in the district who's out there trying to push for uniformity and standardization. On the other hand, you will have teachers and administrators who are first and foremost, the pioneers, those go-getters, and they want to do whatever they want. And so you can't have either polar opposite. You, as the leadership, has to find a way to bring those needs together, because your tech director will extinguish creativity and drive, in many cases, and doesn't understand teaching and learning. That's their biggest problem. And your teachers don't understand how difficult it is to maintain 34 different math programs. Any chance that makes sense, Scott?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we have here. They're all good people, but there's a disconnect between the tech director of technology, and what a classroom really looks like and what should be going on.
Absolutely. And because I'm pretty good with technology. I can't program a computer, I won't say that, but I have been working with them since the early 80s, since the mid 80s, and so I consider myself knowledgeable. And oftentimes it came in a small school district like Gowanda, it came to when you're in a meeting deciding what you're going to purchase, all eyes would finally turn to the superintendent and say, okay, what are we going to do? And I had to be the decision maker. I liked it. I tried to be an informed decision maker, but that was my role. That's the role I'm trying to impart to you. You can't necessarily delegate this to someone else in a building. All right, especially the size of buildings that most of you are going to be working in. All right, I hope that makes some sense. The leadership of today thinks first of how to get the problem automated by some technology, then how to organize and array human components. This is the giant leap forward for education as it moves closer to the business enterprise model. For 5 generations, the span of attention of school leadership has been focused on the basics of the industrial age: buildings and grounds, staffing, goal setting, curriculum as raw material, and managing the schedules. Right? All you future principals, this is your job description. None of this is gone, but we're adding another level onto the system. Danielle, so you're here, Danielle? Danielle, let me know you're here. I'm going to count you absent. All right. A well-wrought software technology stack built into a complete software house for the institution creates...
Sorry, I'm here. There's like I have a major delay and my video is not connecting for some reason. I keep getting booted.
Okay, that's okay, Danielle. So forget the video for tonight. I'm counting you in, and stay. Well, just keep stay part of the conversation. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
You bet. So here's, I think, the important part, Scott. Others, you have to create highly synced efficiencies and flexibility. Efficiencies, the tech director, and flexibility, the go-getter teacher. It has the capability of replacing the existing structure with a digital unstructure for every element of the past, and yes, including teaching on demand over the internet when a substitute or expert is required. Districts and schools should not only recognize the interconnectedness between their operations digitally and their methods of educating via teachers and screen learning, but they must work to unify all of it together. Call it blended administration to mirror the classroom blended learning trend. Higher harmonic of technical sophistication. This is the ever-changing shift education entered with the incursion of more technology. So in layman's terms, what do we got next? Let me finish with this. An issue is the ability to see the software systems orchestrating a whole. That's important. When leaders are not familiar with the qualities and quantities of information or software development and how that information serves to run the organization, not just serve users, they tend to let everyone decide how to use technology in a giant free-for-all. That's the problem right there. And that's why Scott can't let every one of his teachers or every principal in the district or every director do whatever they want. You can't have a giant free-for-all. This results in activities where the same 6th grade lessons are different teacher by teacher, which might be great for them as teachers, but in terms of results, the school is now looking at unpredictability for channeling customizations. And think if you were doing a process audit in order to get some process data, and if you were in a school that had a technology free-for-all, people were using all kinds of different things, technology and software, it would be like everyone using a different textbook at the same grade level. You see that relationship? And you're going to get uneven results. And it's going to make no sense. And when you do a process audit to try to get data about your process and your programs, one of the first things that's going to come up is everyone's using something different. And what's the action plan? We need to define best practices, what software to keep, what software not. Think of the expense also. So you've got issues from networking that should be uniform. You've got issues about, some teachers think they see something on the internet and they like the bells and whistles and they want to buy it. What's the degree to which it addresses teaching and learning standards for that particular grade level, for that particular content area? We don't know if it does or not. There has to be some way of making decisions about what you want to purchase, what you want to reinforce, what you want to keep, and what you want to not. And that's the idea about a systems thinking. You have to know what the different systems are. Additionally, teachers doing a whole lot of document-based and video-based lesson planning, even with simple workflows and assignment envelopes, are not necessarily creating highly engaging learning because they are not animators, coders, or digital instructional designers who can craft great user experiences. I found this out when I was working at Medaille and for online learning. Only a small handful of the professors were good at designing online learning lessons. Most of them used a script that was made for them. And they didn't want to go outside those boundaries. They just didn't feel comfortable. Personalization gets further distant because the act of having to build so many topics reduces the customization in homegrown digital lessons. Another dimension of awkwardness happens when teachers from one class to another use different apps, different logins, and different metrics such that students from 1 hour to the next are overwhelmed by technical, non-educational elements. The cost to learning is high. Worse, the setup to protect and allow the classroom to silo and be its own island of learning with that teacher immobilizes real transition to real personalization. So this whole conversation, how does this conversation affect vertical and horizontal alignment? Volunteer? How does this conversation affect vertical and horizontal curriculum and instructional alignment?
If
Karen,
each,
this is for you, Karen.
if each teacher in the same content is using something different, you're not horizontally aligned. And if you're not vertically aligned from grade to grade, you can't test what's working, what's not working.
Very good. So my metaphor works, doesn't it, Karen? It's the same as a textbook. It's no different. Would you let every teacher choose their own textbook, their own workbook? You would give them some discretion over some resources, right? But still, there would be a common thread, a common set of standards, a common syllabus, a common curriculum, common benchmarks, maybe common formative assessments in order to hold people accountable and to check their work. The same thing applies to technology. You have to have a systems-wide thinking rather than just hit and miss. Now, maybe you all are getting better at this, but when I was practicing, especially in the earlier days, it was a free-for-all. And it started to get better. Maybe you were all in better condition, better shape than I was when I left. I hope that's the case. Jesse's shaking his head. I'm not sure if that's a no, we're not, or Jesse, are you agreeing with me saying no, we're not further ahead in your district? Unmute, Jess.
I think it's still free for all out there. And in our building, I see a lot of different teachers, some embracing the technology, and they come up with lots of different programs and different apps and stuff like that to use. And then some teachers are still, stuck using no technology in their classroom at all. I think it's a disservice to the kid. So other classrooms using playlists and all sorts of different things, and some classrooms teachers are resisting it, and I think it really slows the kids down.
Thank you, Jesse, for supporting that thesis I'm projecting here. Let me bring this back to the CBT. The computer-based testing, of course, requires that students in the third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and up, are familiar with using the computer, which means keyboarding skills. How many of you have required keyboarding no later than the fourth grade in your district? Required keyboarding for all students no later than fourth grade. Kobe, you got it. I'm not seeing the other hands. So imagine this. Your kids step into the fourth grade CBT, computer-based test in ELA and math, and they don't know how to log in, or they don't know where to find a QWERTY, QWERTY, on the computer. They don't know how to type. And the clock is ticking during the exam. And the time is up. That's not systems thinking. And that's where we're getting to here. The author is asserting that, like textbooks and like buildings and grounds and like cafeteria and like everything else that you do, you have a new domain that you have to fit into the system, and it's technology. And you can't delegate it to someone else. And if you do delegate it to someone else, you still have to have a working understanding of the essential elements of that domain so that people don't do something stupid and you take the blame. Because in the end, the buck stops with you once you're a building principal. All right. The cost of not transitioning to a managed systems view is incalculable. The capability and efficiency of systems management is the actual promise that tech brings. Schools and teachers err where they only consider tech as something to have students get a basic understanding about or something to provide niftier lessons. It's a ubiquitous tool, ubiquitous everywhere. A delivery mechanism, organizer, and point of analysis to master a fantastic level of learner service. And to make the point, look at how I'm teaching you we're teaching and learning each other via technology. It's so prevalent, it's so ubiquitous. And she's so darn cute, Kobe. Geez. He or she, I'm not sure when they're that little.
It's he. His name's Harrison, and he's looking right at you.
Hello, Harrison. Let's make you a little bit bigger just to pop your eyes out.
Say hi.
Hi, Harrison. Oh, man.
He's just
Hey,
saying
that's the boy.
hi. They're taking off.
All right.
Sorry to interrupt.
Not at all. It was a pleasure. So now, I hope that I've set the table on this one system within a system, technology systems. Now I'm going to place technology systems into a broader context, the entire organizational construct. And these are the learning targets that, in my mind, I wanted you to be able to master. The students will be able to identify. I want you to be able to identify the discrete functions and interaction between components, between functions, the interactions amongst teachers, learners, administrators, digital content, and learning goals, and use that data to derive a useful construct, a system that creates efficiency and utility for all. Goes back to that first slide. I'm going to try to do that with you here with subsequent slides. Now, first we're going to go big, at the highest level, the most generic systems I could find, the most generic systems thinking. This is the 6 systems of organizational effectiveness for any organization. Tanya and Kobe will remember this. In this case, we have 6 overriding systems. Leadership at the center, accountability, communication, delivery, human performance, and metrics. If you think about any organization, schooling in particular, we're all governed by these 6 systems. I'll get into the more detail in a moment. Here's the systems overview. When the leadership system at the center functions effectively, leadership, that's you. Performance improves. If you don't function effectively, performance goes down, no matter the capacity of your staff. You will get your big old feet stuck in every door and disrupt everything going on because you're a bad leader. It cannot be avoided. The leadership system is the central organizing system that must deliver on all functions owned by the top team. These functions include and require that leadership become cohesive, define the future, the vision, set direction, create and execute strategy, ensure alignment, communicate clarity, engage stakeholders, develop talent, manage performance, build accountability, ensure succession, allocate resources, craft the culture, and deliver results. There's your job description. Don't let it be daunting. In time, you will master it. It's not as daunting as it appears if you work hard and have the right ethics and build a network and a team. You can do that. But that's the systems overview. We use our proven whole systems approach to advance the 6 systems of organizational effectiveness. This approach to develop the organization with leadership at the core balances the development of competence and capability with consciousness and character, and transforms any enterprise into a profitable and purposeful organization. Every essential system is integrated and aligned. The 6 systems are broader in scope than functional departments, which I'm going to go to next, and must be understood independently and interdependently as part of an integrated whole. These 6 systems set up the conditions and components necessary to create a healthy, high-performing organization. Now let's introduce functions. Functions are underneath systems. Together they create the whole. Follow with me. Here's the good thing. You're not going to be tested on this, all right? But I am going to quiz you on it as we go along. School district functions. An organizational function is a core process or set of activities carried out within a department or areas of an organization. Common functions include operations, marketing, human resources, information technology, customer service, finance, and warehousing. This definition applies more specifically to business and industry, but these are synonyms for what we do as well. Here's a list of management functions. Governance, teaching and learning, which is curriculum instruction assessment, professional development, budget and finance, student information management, personnel management, labor relations, communications and media relations, collective bargaining, facilities management, transportation, food service, extracurricular activities, interscholastic sports, technology, health and safety. These are all the functional areas in which you have to become competent. All of them. I don't think that you can afford to not be competent in each of them. It doesn't mean that you intimately handle every one of them, but you need to know about every one of them so that you can do your job of defining roles and responsibilities, creating structures, all right, holding people accountable. If you don't know what's buried in each of these, you can't do your job. And then people won't follow you, and you won't be a leader. Danielle, you still with me?
Yep, I'm still following along.
All right, very good. And twiddling your hair yet?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't tell, but I'm still following along.
I know you got a delay. You got a delay tonight. The symbiosis between organizational systems and school district functions. Colby and Tanya, I still like this. I still think this makes sense. The systems are on the left, and the systems impact and are being impacted by the functions. Now let's look in detail at the 6 systems, all right? Most of this is just permitting me time to talk this through. We have a leadership function, all right? Leaders must define and refine key processes and execute them with daily discipline. And as I maintain, if you don't know the functions and the processes, you can't execute them with daily discipline. You can't define and refine them. They must translate vision and values into strategy and objectives, processes and practices, actions and accountabilities, execution and performance. Leaders address 3 questions: vision and value, strategy and approach, structure and alignment. And again, I'll say it again, I maintain that if you don't know what goes on in these functions and how they relate to each other, then you can't do this. Strategy and approach, structure and alignment, you won't know what people are talking about. You won't know how to delegate authority. You won't know what people to include on a planning committee. You won't know what constitutes a good decision and a bad decision. And your staff will run in circles around you, manipulate you, and eventually bury you. Communication. Everything happens in or because of a conversation. I love that. That's my definition of politics. Everything happens in or because of a conversation, and every exchange is a potential moment of truth, a point of failure or critical link to the success change. And you are at the center of communication. Strategic communication ensures that the impact of your message is consistent with your intentions and results in understanding. What you say, the way you say it, where, when, and under what circumstances it is said shape the performance culture. Let that sink in. That's a big responsibility. Accountability. Leaders translate vision and strategic direction into goals and objectives, actions and accountabilities. Performance accountability systems clarify what is expected of people and align consequences and rewards with actual performance. Leaders need to build discipline into the leadership process and management cycle to achieve accountability, predictability, learning, renewal, and sustainability. What's the one big required accountability measure that we have in New York State right now? That's true. I wasn't thinking of that, Tony, but you're absolutely right. ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, is a federal accountability measure. More to home. Daniel got it. APPR. Very good, Danielle. 3012D. Even though it's been watered down somewhat because of all the controversy, you still have to have a teacher evaluation system in place. And part of that, Shane has got it as well. A component of that is the New York State tests, all right? All right. Delivery. The best organizations develop simple processes that are internally efficient, locally responsible, and globally adaptable. This is instruction. The delivery of services, all right? This is the guidance counselor. This is the nurse. This is the cafeteria and the bus drivers, all right? Complexity is removed from the customer experience. Complexity is removed from the customer experience. That also tends to be a good standard to look at when you're trying to choose software. Get rid of the complexity. Enable customers to engage in ways that are both elegant and satisfying. Establishing and optimizing operational performance is an ongoing journey. Operations need to be focused on the priority work using the most effective techniques. Here, this is important for the leader. Aligning initiatives and operations with strategy. You can choose that software that you want to purchase because it aligns with our vision and our mission and our overall strategy to improve math scores in the 4th grade. Continuously improving operations, pursuing performance breakthroughs in key areas, using advanced change techniques in support of major initiatives, establishing a pattern of executive sponsorship for all initiatives, and building future capability and capacity. Performance. Human performance is designed to attract, develop, and retain the most talented people. This is a central office function, no doubt. The idea is to hire the best people and help them develop their skills, professional development, talents and knowledge over time, to build capacity, to increase people's performance. And measurement. A system of metrics, reviews, and course corrections keeps the business on track. Organizations need concrete measures that facilitate quality control. Formative assessments, as an example. Unit tests. SLOs. Within these parameters, control is instrumental to validity, viability, and profitability. Every activity has a set of daily rituals and measures. Leaders establish and maintain the measurement system to ensure disciplined processes. Hey, this is you. You track progress against strategy and planning. Review status on operational results through clear key metrics. Update the strategy regularly and ensure action is driven by insight based on relevant current information and scope and changing vision. Think of the continuous school improvement model. Plan, do, study, revise. You need metrics in order for that to be carried out with any fidelity. And that's your job, to make sure that those metrics are in place. All right, quickly, now let's look at the school district functions to make sure we know what we're talking about. First, we've got governance. Governance is at the head, if you will. What is good governance? What do schools need it? Good governance is a set of responsibilities, practices, policies, and procedures Exercised by the institution provides strategic direction, ensure objectives are achieved, and resources are used responsibly with accountability. In our systems, in our organizations, who provides the governance? Jerry Lee, very good. Board of Education. Absolutely right, Jerry Lee. That's where it starts, especially when they set up policies. And especially then when the superintendent, working with his team and with staff, develop procedures around those policies. All right, that's the governance aspect of what we do. Then we have this whole teaching and learning, curriculum instruction and assessment domain or function. This is interaction and alignment between curriculum instruction and assessment, leading to student achievement. That's a system in and of itself. Professional development is another system. All right, so some of these things are obvious. I'm going to go a little bit faster at 5:53. Budget and finance. We know what this is about. Provide school district leaders with an opportunity to justify the collection and expenditure of public funds. Revenue, the money coming in, and expenditures, the money going out. Student information management. We've talked about this at length, a repository for all student demographic data, like name, date of birth, address, parents and guardians, discipline referrals, attendance, classifications, etc., etc., etc. Personnel management can be defined as obtaining, using, and maintaining a satisfied workforce. We assess employment needs, recruit, hire, develop, and terminate employees, tracks payroll and benefits, supervises employees, and due process proceedings. Labor relations. This is the ways in which workers and managers of a company talk to, behave toward, and deal with each other. You've got the chain of command, daily personal interactions, fair and equitable application of the collective bargaining agreement. This is all labor relations. Communications, which is different from the communications 6 systems, where you have to clearly define roles and responsibilities, communication culture, a choice of media, duration and frequency of your communications, agreed upon stakeholders, and agreed upon messaging. Collective bargaining. This is negotiations, the process in which working people through their unions negotiate contracts with their employers to determine their terms of employment, including pay, benefits, hours, leave, etc., etc. Facilities management, all of your buildings, your grounds, and your equipment. Transportation. All of your busing, all right, to get students back and forth to school and to field trips and sports events, etc. Your in-house or contract transportation, your fleet of vehicles, your drivers, all of your equipment, your routing, your record keeping, your testing and your training, and your insurance. Food service, breakfasts, lunches, sometimes dinners, all right. Your contract management. This would be your legal services, your utilities, auditing, banking, fiscal advisors, your insurance agencies, your vendors, organizations with whom you have contracts, specific contracts that you're going to abide by. They provide a service and you pay them. Extracurricular activities in my book are separate function from curriculum instruction assessment. All right, these are special interest clubs, art, music, drama performances that are not credit bearing. Intramural sports, meaning intramural, sports within the walls, intra and mural. Intra, within, mural, walls. Within your walls, I don't know if people still have intramurals, but intramurals, field trips, class or group trips, that's separate too. Interscholastic sports, huge, huge. All right. Technology, hardware, software, connectivity, networking, licenses, integration and support, training. We have health and safety function. You have compliance and reporting, emergency planning, attention to social emotional health of students and employees, nurse's office, counseling services, very important. Those are a list of the systems and the functions. A bit daunting, no doubt, correct? Yolanda, in your setting, with some differences, right, Yolanda? You could probably identify with all these different functions as well. True?
So this is a little off topic, but I do have a question. if when we think of governance, we think of the Board of Education, what would the State Department of Ed be?
Certainly, yes. If you were to move up the hierarchy and the ladder, you would eventually reach the State Education Department, and then even further, the federal government. All right, but right now we're talking about the functions within and functions and the systems within a distinct organization, Yolanda. However, as a charter, you may in fact want to include, well, not that you have to do anything with it, but in your thinking, the State Education Department plays such a large role in what you do, or the Buffalo City Schools plays a role in what you do because you're not entirely divorced from them. If you were trying to think about your entire system, you would have to think of where that fits. And it does fit under governance. So if you were trying to graphically represent it, Yolanda, under governance, you might have three components to that: State Ed, City of Buffalo, and your own Board of Education. Okay? Okay. Scott, let me ask you to get some confirmation here. You don't have to agree with me if you don't agree, but would you, what would you say about the degree to which you dabble in each of those functions on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis, all of them.
Very good.
On a daily basis is hit and miss, but in the course of a Monday through Friday, you without a doubt hit every function.
Thank you, Scott. And Jerry Lee notes that in her role in human relations, she interacts with many of these functions. That's probably a good segue, Jerry Lee, because that's true. Because notice I said a little while ago that these things relate to each other in and between each other. And we're going to look at that right now. Here's a graphic. Kobe's looking at that hard. Let me try to make it a little bigger. Here's a graphic where I put the 6 systems in the center, and around that are all the different functions. And you might think of yourself, as Scott just did, being the person who's trying to juggle all those balls. Right, Scott? We talk about that all the time, juggling all the different balls in your job as a building principal or a superintendent. Kobe's nodding too, because he's touching on a good half dozen of these in his job as a dean of students on a regular basis. All right, so let's try to make this a little more real. I picked out one. Kobe and Tanya, you know the answers to this, so just stay with me. I want to try to make this a little bit more real. Let's analyze one function, teaching and learning, against systems thinking. And in this example, we're going to talk about systems pressure on curriculum instruction assessment, or the Common Core and high stakes testing. And we're going to run the Common Core implementation and high stakes testing and things like APPR through the sieve called the 6 systems. Now in this case, I just want you to notice, I flipped the relationship. Now we have Common Core, the curriculum instruction and assessment at the center, because we're looking at the way the 6 systems on the periphery, how they impact one function, Common Core and high stakes testing. So let me ask you a couple questions. Let's assess the degree to which systems were aligned with reform. Tell me, get some audience participation here. Leadership. Think about, in this case, the leadership is twofold. The leadership is at the state level, and simultaneously the leadership is at the district level, and even at the building level. So when you answer this question, I want to know the degree to which, around Common Core and high stakes testing, the degree to which leaders set vision, strategic approach, and structural alignment. And it's okay to be critical. Not too critical. We are recording, so don't slam your building principal unless you're going to be politically correct here. Just want to advise you. What's your opinion? on the degree to which leadership at either the state or local level set a vision, strategic approach, and structural alignment. Amanda, go ahead.
So I have a different approach when it comes to this state testing and the high stakes testing. Because we're not a district school, our information gets reported back to all the other districts. And a lot of the state testing does not align with the type of students I have. Their grade levels are vastly below what they should be functioning at. So they're expecting a kid that reads at a 3rd grade level to take the 8th grade assessment.
All right, time out. Hold that thought. All right, hold that thought.
Okay.
Because it's going to be more apropos to future questions on this slide.
Okay.
But maybe, if you can, maybe you were going here. I'd like to hear opinions about how leadership set vision, strategic approach, and structural alignment. Can you answer that specific question?
Yeah, so I was going with the leadership more, not my building principle, but more the state.
Okay.
Because I feel that the leadership sometimes doesn't address the issues that the students that I have when it comes to the state assessment. They don't have a vision when it comes to what my students look like when they take those state assessments. Very
good, Amanda. So, both in terms of vision and, it sounds to me, approach and alignment, you felt that the leadership was off target.
Yes.
Through a lack of listening, if you will, a lack of coherence with what you see in the field. Very good. I didn't mean to preempt you. But what you were saying is also going to come up in the future as we talk more, so don't be afraid to come back at it with that. How about other opinions before I start calling on people?
So I
Go ahead,
thought
Karen.
I thought the state had a vision. I just don't think they followed through with a strategic approach in the right way. But they did have a vision of what they wanted everyone in the state to accomplish.
Very good. Before I step on any toes, I'll wait with my comments. See what else. Let's have one more person talk to me about critique the state or the local vision in implementing.
I was going to say the same thing as far as setting a vision and alignment. I think is good, but the strategic approach I think is a little iffy. How they expect everybody to get there. Like there's a lot of flexibility.
And how about the in terms of strategic approach, Yolanda, because I agree with you, in terms of strategic approach, does the fact that it seemed like it was rolled out, well, no, hang on to that. I think I'm jumping ahead now, Amanda. I got to slow myself down. So you're all three right. Very good. So a bit of a critique there that it wasn't handled as well as it could have been from the leadership perspective. I want to think about this, because I won't ask you to answer in public, but think about at the local level how this was rolled out by either your superintendent or your principal. And in your own head, think back on whether or not that was done, if enough leadership was shown here. How about communications? What you say, the way you say it, where, when, under what circumstances to shape the performance culture. How about the degree to which communications was handled properly in the rollout of the Common Core and high stakes testing?
I think it was unfortunate. I mean, I definitely disagreed with how the state rolled it out or didn't roll it out. I mean, at one point, you're talking Common Core, they were providing whether you were adopting or adapting, and they didn't even have the modules ready when they said they were going to be ready. But neither here or there, the fact that school districts in the state weren't on the same page, and there were school districts promoting opt-out, no matter what you believe in, it set up the whole profession for nothing but a big fail, because there was such a lack of communication and different communication between state level and local levels.
I think you're right as well, Scott. You saw it firsthand in your capacity. Communication around the vision, approach, and alignment were really lacking, it seems, and there were a lot of questions. How about that? The same questions about accountability. Leaders need to build discipline into the leadership process and management cycle to achieve accountability. predictability, learning, renewal, and sustainability. Let me ask this more pointed question. Was APPR in its original format sustainable, predictable? Shada?
I mean, as far as it being sustainable, I think that because of what happened with parents and having kids opting out of testing and things like that, that there was a lot of push against using standardized testing as such a high indicator of teacher effectiveness. On the other side of that, I'm a little bit bitter about the changes because I'm an independent evaluator and we're looking at, what is going to happen next year with APPR and how that's going to affect us.
Yeah, good point. Being an evaluator, I guess the whole issue of sustainability has proved to be it's not. If it was sustainable, original 3012C and D, we would still have it, right? And we don't. So it wasn't sustainable. And Shana, here's a pet peeve of mine, you might be in a position to answer this question. Did you ever think about, you know how all the scoring works, and you know all the variables, and you know all the different ways that people evaluate and train, et cetera, and you know how complicated the SLOs were, and all the different things you had to have in place. Did you ever consider all the data that was pushed up to the portal by the different districts? And regarding comparability? Because I always thought, go ahead.
I mean, I guess like in my side of it, we basically didn't deal with the SLOs or like the testing portion. We just, dealt with the observations. But I guess kind of the point of having the independent evaluator is that it can be so skewed depending on who's doing the observation, how much time they put into it, like how strictly they adhere to the rubric. I know that every district can use a different rubric, and just having that also creates a problem with comparing like if teachers are effective or highly effective in one district compared to another, because a lot of the frameworks and rubrics are measuring kind of different things.
Yeah. Bottom line, it was too complicated. It was just too complicated, which is why it had to be abandoned. Thank you, Shana, for your perspective. Jerry Lee?
I also think in terms of accountability, I don't think it did what it was meant to do, which is hold people accountable for performance, because everybody's highly effective or effective, and unions got involved and negotiated parameters around what they could grieve if somebody, I've seen in contracts, if somebody got a developing score or ineffective, they could bring that up as a grievance. And so nobody was actually getting those overall scores at the end of the day.
Yeah, you bring up a very good point. When they introduced negotiations into teacher evaluation, that really set superintendents on a whirl. We all said, Jerry, that's a very good point. We all said when superintendents, we were winding up going to training meetings on APPR, and we were being trained how to evaluate teachers by attorneys, we knew that we had taken a wrong turn. All right, that said, how about delivery? Remember, we're talking about the systems asserting influence on functions. How about delivery? The best organizations deliver simple processes that are internally efficient, locally responsive, and globally adaptable. Complexity is removed from the customer experience and able to engage you in ways that are both elegant and satisfying. We'll skip over them because we just talked about that. Some of us have just critiqued it for its lack of simplicity on how complex APPR in particular was. And the Common Core as well. In the beginning, when teachers were handed the modules, Remember the angst that our teachers expressed when an 8th grade teacher was handed the modules and what they were supposed to be teaching, and the module presumed that in year 1, that 8th grader had been through the Common Core from grades 3rd grade up. There was no continuity. It was pretty nuts. Back to you folks. Performance. The human performance system is designed to attract, develop, and retain the most talented people. How about this question? What has happened to the teaching profession since APPR in New York State? Teacher recruitment has gone in what direction, Jerry Lee from HR?
Down.
There's a lot less teachers in the pool. We're scrambling. And a big part of that is APPR. Teachers are leaving New York.
Exactly. I mean, certainly there's other pressures like misbehavior in the classroom, lack of parent support, poverty in the class. We know that, but we've heard the anecdotal record. And Jerry Lee, case in point, they're leaving New York State because of APPR. How about measurement? Organizations need concrete measures that facilitate quality control, consistent behaviors, predictability, productivity results. How about the degree to which measurement was properly addressed? That system in the implementation of Common Core, APPR, and high-stakes testing.
There was
And
a
Kobe
lot
and
of,
Tom, go ahead.
there was a lot of flexibility at the local level, so the measurement became somewhat laughable depending on where the union and what the union and the district agreed upon. Where I'm at, it's unfortunate, but the APPR, it doesn't help with performance, and it's there for compliance, definitely not commitment.
Very good, Scott. And Sarah says, like we said, APR measurement is not consistent between district evaluators within the same district. Very true. And then, of course, to add insult to injury, in the second iteration, they came up with the notion that you could have evaluators other than the building principals. So they created a problem of putting too much on the shoulders of building principals, and they started to get this lack of reliability and validity between evaluators. So then they decided that high school principals had to evaluate elementary teachers, and elementary teachers had to go to the high school building. What the heck? So through our own discussion here, I don't know, it's hard to give Albany a passing grade. And let's be honest, at the local level, there were a lot of superintendents and building principals who said, this too shall pass. A lot of principals and superintendents who said, I can't make heads or tails out of this. I don't know what it is. I can't do it. It's garbage. It's silly. Not everyone, but too many. And here we are.
So, Chuck, so when Albany fails or doesn't have success with the rollout of this, we talk about accountability. Who in turn holds them accountable from the top down? Does it start and end with them, or where does it go?
Well, that's a real good question. Let's analyze that. I would say that, let's look where it started from first, Kobe. APPR was put in place in 2008 so that New York could qualify for $700 million in ARRA aid. You were all in high school in 2008. In 2008, we had the Great Recession. And schools were laying off thousands of teachers and staff. So in order to avoid laying off people, the federal government did some deficit spending, and in particular, New York State had $700 million available to them if they would put through an accountability system. Gobi, the New York State legislature then decided that it would pass and the governor would sign the APPR, which included high-stakes testing. Now, when I read critical analysis of the most recent elections in Albany, What are some of the prognosticators say resulted in the fact that we have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic Assembly today? Which is why I suggest to you all to read the newspaper and pay attention to educational politics. What is one of the reasons why we have a Democratic houses and Democratic governor? Teachers union. Teachers union spent big bucks to get the Republicans out of the Senate in particular, and they won. So bottom line, Kobe, John King is now, I don't even know where John King is anymore. John King, the commissioner at the time, went up to the federal government, and I don't even know where he is now. The whole legislature changed over to become democratically controlled in both houses, and we now have a new commissioner. So you could say that there was a price to pay. I'd like to think so. Bobby, follow it through? And I dare say that there may have been some principals or superintendents who lost their jobs as well, for maybe failing to get their reports in on time and cost them state aid. Whatever. Certainly there were some careers that were affected by poor decisions. Still with me, Danielle? Danielle?
Yes.
All right, very good. Shana, so basically the repercussion for Albany is being voted out. Well, when we speak to Albany, it's a big place. So yes, those legislators, Shana, who predominantly wanted it and spoke hard about it, well, teachers tend to be Democratic anyways, on the whole. It's a demographic fact. So yes, being voted out, and some people lost their jobs as well and were pressured out of the state education department also. So it's my belief that you can analyze the 6 systems against any of a school district's various functions as a planning guide before, during, and after initiatives undertaken by district leadership. This is what's important. When you are considering an initiative within a particular function, like Jerry Lee, we're going to change our recruitment practices. Shana, we're going to change our evaluation practices. Tanya, we're going to change our budget and finance communications to the public. Whenever you pick anything that you're going to do within a function, you take these, what's on the screen now, you look at these 6 systems, and you try to come up with plans and strategies that comport to these 6 systems. You've got to make sure that leadership is in place, communications, accountability, delivery, performance, and measurement. These are the standards to which you want to make sure that you're, while you're planning, that you hit those things and make sure that you do those things so that you have a sound basis for the change that you're hoping for. Let's identify the various systems of the student learning achievement. Forget that. Let's forget that too. Well, just to give a flavor for it, let's remember the curriculum instruction assessment and student support function that we talked about in the standards. Some standards can have sub-functions as well. Some functions can have sub-functions as well. For instance, in curriculum instruction assessment, you have your curriculum instruction management and alignment. You have your resource libraries, inventory management. You have your instructional strengths and weaknesses, which is your rubrics, your assessment schedules, your assessment development and item inventory, you have your assessment item analysis databases, you have your student management systems, student accommodations. There's just so much behind each function. Let's take a look at how these functions come into play when we have, for instance, new student workflow. Just when a new student comes into your district. This might be hard to see. You get a new student registration, and then all this has to happen. I'll read it out. New student registration, you've got to have emergency contacts, creation of an academic schedule, assignment to a teacher, special accommodations if necessary, health records have to be logged, transportation has to be arranged. You have to check for their free reduced lunch price status in the cafeteria. They've got to be given library privileges. You have to provide them with curriculum instruction and assessment resources, like textbooks, for instance, different apps. You've got to set up the discipline record. You've got to have passwords for applications, technology applications, assignments of equipment, like a Chrome notebook or whatever, all right? Repository for assignments if you're using a cloud, someplace where they're going to put their assignments. You have to have counting for student and state aid purposes. Those in the business office want to know where those students are. You have New York State Education Department accountability measures. You have interscholastic sports rosters and eligibility. These are all the different functions that get kicked into gear when a student simply enters your district. And here's where we cycle back now. Stay with me. Here's where I make the argument we cycle back to the very first slide when we talked about technology systems. And we talked about having to make sure that the technology systems, the software and hardware that we use was part of a whole. This is where I'm leading with this, all right? When I took a look at all of these different things that happen when a student enters a building, and I may have missed a couple things. When I took all of these and I tracked them and buried them within a different function, I put a star next to the different function. And what we can see here is that when a new student enters the building, look at the functions that are affected when you think system-wide, when you think of a system. Budget and finance, curriculum instruction assessment, student management, communications, transportation, food service, extracurricular activities, interscholastic sports, technology, health and wellness. When that student entered the door, all these systems were activated. And this allows us now to get real practical about this. Each of these functions today in 2019 operate digitally. I would think that in 95% of the school districts, all of these functions are operationalized digitally. Maybe not well, and not to a high standard, but in theory, they're all managed digitally. And now we're going to get real and talk about how that works for a superintendent, a tech director, an assistant superintendent, a building principal. Because we're going to visit Erie-One-Bosse's and the Western New York Regional Information Center for tech tools that are appropriate to the system and function delivery. Now I've got to check for understanding here. I'm going to go one by each. Karen, can you follow the logic I'm using here? Don't be afraid to stop me, my friends, if I'm really... Let me not pick just on Karen. Is the logic that I'm trying to set up making sense?
Yes.
Is that you, Danielle?
No, that was Karen.
Okay. That's Karen. So Karen, paraphrase back what you hear me trying to say.
That there are many systems and that we can now find, we're now going to use different tools to find information about those systems.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Jesse, would you mind putting your take on what you hear me saying?
I think, there's a distinct process for every function that is in the school district. And there's so many different functions, and you want to use a step-by-step process to delve deeper into each of those steps.
Very good, very good. That's an important component of what we're talking about. Tanya, give me your spin on what you hear me saying. Tanya? Unmute.
Can you hear me now? Can you repeat the question,
I do.
please?
Yeah. What's your take on where I'm headed with this?
Regarding, I'm sorry.
Why am I, basically, what have I just said, and why am I heading over to BOCES to look at tech tools?
Why are you heading over to Tech Tools and BOCES?
You can pass on it, Tanya. You can pass on it.
Can we pass for now and come back to me, please?
You bet.
Thank you.
Could I take a guess that you're going to talk about the BOCES and the COSERs and the different things they offer to then turn around and help the school districts with looking at functions that they operate under?
Okay, thanks, Scott. All three of you had it right. All three of you had it right. Go back to the standards. I'm not going to flip there, but think back to the standards and think back to the title of this course. Technology, data, and continuous school improvement. I'm now talking about the technology and the systems and the functions in a school organization and how they're related, and most importantly, how we manage all of those things today with digital tools. We're managing these things with digital tools. And if we go back to the very beginning of today's lesson, I talked to you about making sure that your digital tools talk to each other, we're networkable, we're consistent across grade levels, we're of good quality, with something that both your tech director and your teachers could support, bringing all of these things together. So this is the message. We have all of these systems, we have all of these functions. These systems and functions eventually all lead to hopefully higher student achievement. We've got these tools that help us do this job. How do we choose these tools? What are these tools, and how do we choose them? Don, does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
All right. So I know it's I'm really trying to do a lot, and I can't even touch it. I can't even touch it. It's out there someplace in the netherworld. All right, here we go. But I got to give you an overview. I want to make sure people know what BOCES is first. I never want to assume anything. The New York State Legislature created boards of cooperative educational services to provide shared educational programs and services to school districts within the state. BOCES partner with districts to provide a broad range of services that help meet the evolving educational needs of students. BOCES membership is not currently available to the Big Five city school districts. So I'm sorry to say New York City, Buffalo, Rochester, Yonkers, and Syracuse are not able to access BOCES. Some special projects, yes, you can, but just as a matter of course, no. Here, you can't read this unless you go to the original, but here is a list of all the BOCES in the state. I'm sitting in Erie 2 BOCES. Where is it? Someplace here. Actually, it's not Erie 2. It's Cattaraugus, yeah, it's Erie 2. It doesn't matter. I'm in Erie 2, Cattaraugus, Chautauqua County BOCES. Erie 1 BOCES houses the RIC, the Regional Information Center. There are 12 regional information centers in New York State, which are organized under the Board of Cooperative Educational Services. Typically, a RIC serves several BOCES within their region. By regionalizing services, the RICs make a wider range of technology services available to school districts. Go back to the title of this course, technology. Add the size of the district. These relationships increase the buying power of a district and promote consistent technical standards. Look at these relationships increase the buying power of a district and promote consistent technical standards. Why am I emphasizing promote consistent technical standards in the context of today's lesson? Sarah?
Because when we were talking about those other systems and looking at APPR and all of that, we were looking at that being consistent across the board.
Very good, Sarah. Very good. And even earlier in the lesson, we talked about technological consistency, anything from vertical, horizontal, curriculum alignment to budget and finance. All right? So, yes, Sarah, very good. Now, I'm going to start pulling in some other people. Pauline, you can start to expect a question. Amanda, I think I want to come back to you as well. And Yolanda, I'll try to bring the three of you into the conversation as I move forward here, all right? There is a collective value that the RICs bring. The RICs collectively support more than 95% of public school districts in effectively utilizing student management systems. Wouldn't it be good if you knew someone who knew more than you could help you manage your student management systems? Good. I don't have to do it alone. RICs partner with each other to support disaster recovery and business continuity initiatives. Disaster recovery, Amanda, is what? What is disaster recovery in the technology world, Amanda? No? Yolanda, do you know what disaster recovery is? Pauline, do you know what disaster recovery is? When your systems break down right, Jerry Lee, when your systems break down and you are worried that you're going to lose all your data, all your human resource data, exactly, Jesse, computer crash. They will support disaster recovery. Another thing that you don't have to worry about, all right? The RICs negotiate many contracts collaboratively in order to maximize efficiencies and economies of scale. Great. I can get BOCES aid on software packages. This is pretty cool. And all the RICs assist providers in obtaining Medicaid reimbursement for eligible services through contracts awarded by NYSED. The RIC partners with Gartner, The RIC offers a statewide catalog of free professional development offerings. This is great. You all have a RIC that you can go to and help you with uniform purchasing, setting standards for purchasing, coming up with contracts with vendors so you don't have to worry about it, helping you with disaster recovery. This is all the good stuff I need to know at the district level. Here is a picture of all of our RICs. I'm in the Winnie RIC. Jesse, you're in the Cine RIC. I asked that question, and I believe the answer is yes, Jesse, because I know in particular that you have to use your RIC to push your state aid information up to Albany, your student achievement information. What I don't know, Jesse, and I couldn't get an answer when I asked someone at the RIC, can you purchase hardware and software through them? I don't know if you can do that, because that might be handled through a BOCES COSER as opposed to a RIC. So I don't know. You'd have to ask Jesse. I'm sorry I can't help you there. Okay, so now we've got that figured out. In a moment, we're actually going to go. We're going to go to, and I'll show you what this looks like. Here's the website for Erie One. Here's the website for the Winnie RIC. What do I got next? Okay, I'm going to share the screen. So you know this takes me a moment. Let me go through and share the screen here so I can, well, share the screen at 6:37. Hang on. Okay, you can see my screen now. I'm going to go to a different tab. Go to Erie 1 BOCES. Erie 1 BOCES. Go to, where's it, the website? Here's the WinRIC. All right. What I want to go to services. Here's the service directory, they call it. I'm going to go by division and go to technology services. And I want you to look at this. Here is an alphabetical listing of all the pages. And there's 57 of them. There's 1,136 services. Now that's obviously a lot. But look what I can do over here. I can go click on cafeteria management, and I can get all of the cafeteria management software applications that will help me manage that function. All right, let's take another one, a different one. Let's go to, let me see if I can find something for Jerry Lynn. Here, Jerry Lynn, finance and HR systems. Here's the list alphabetically of, and there are 66 of these services found, Jerry Lee. Now understand, my friends, not all of them are software packages. They'll be the software package, the software license, the software support, training, disaster recovery, certain elements of it. It's all different things. So it's different bundles, but here it is. Here's Finance Manager, additional special projects, Finance Manager, Affordable Care Act, Finance Manager, Access Administration, Access Review, APPR and Staff Snapshot, Business Office Consultation, etc., etc., etc. These are all the services that are available, the technology services that are available that help you manage the function called budget and finance and the function called human resources. And my point here is, in line with this course, you have to have uniform, consistent, all right? You have to make sense decisions about what software you're going to purchase, and you have to think system-wide, because systems talk to each other, all right? So you can do that with any one of these if you want. Special education systems. Those of you in special ed will see things. Special ed will see things that you know about. Here's ClearTrack. District assessment import for that. Let's see. Next 20 services. Something called Frontline, which I'm not familiar with. All right. So I think I make the point, right? I want to show you. I think I can leave that right now. Do I need to stay there for any reason? Because I'm going to leave that. I'll stop sharing my screen. Okay, we're back together, right? Thank you, Jerry Lee. Frontline is for recruitment, IEP direct evaluations, one-stop shop. Very good. Important what she just said. One-stop shop, because it's integrated. These functions, recruitment, IEP direct, and evaluations, those separate functions have all been brought together under one technology application called Frontline. And here's the beauty. You didn't have to do it. BOCES did it for you. They contacted the vendors. This is how this works. Someone goes to a workshop or a conference or calls up another, goes to another school district and finds out, oh, we use Frontline, and it's not a BOCES service yet. Or we use XYZ student math package, and then eventually someone requests that it gets enough attention. Someone from the districts requests that BOCES take a look at it, and BOCES goes and they evaluate it, and they have their own standards. They eventually have different vendors come in. They eventually sign contracts. They test it out for you, et cetera, et cetera. They do all the upfront legwork for you. And then you purchase that service from them, and then you get aid back on all of those features of that service. And what happens? Whatever function that software is to promote, it's all done for you. And that's how it works. Because if you're running more than one software application, which is true for most companies, and these disparate programs don't talk to each other, you have a problem. It's called duplicate data entry, and it's tedious, time-consuming, and costly. Based on my experience chatting with hundreds of prospective clients, the number one reason for moving up to a type of operating system that the current same information once, twice, 3 times, or 4 times. Remember earlier I mentioned to you that if a new student comes in the building, you've got to enter into the student management system. Well, let me demonstrate it at 644 on slide 88. All of these functions which I mentioned earlier all have some type of technology associated with them. So I went and I searched with that little button I showed you a moment ago, and I searched by function, and I found the software that supports the function. And I knew from my experience, I put the ones up that we used in Gowanda. We used Finance Manager to manage our finance and human resources. We used SNAP in the health center. We used instructional media resources, all right, by planning coordination for the use of video conferencing, virtual field trips, etc. We used base LAN tech support, level 1. So we got some tech support. Library automation to automate our library. We use district content filtering. ClearTrack 200 for special ed. We use the test scoring service to get our data up to Albany. We use School Messenger to communicate via automated telephone calls. Some schools, we did but at the time, but some schools are now using cloud services as a repository for staff and student work. We all have to subscribe to a common set of learning objectives if we want to get aid on any other instructional related hardware software that we tend to purchase. By the way, you can also purchase hardware through BOCES and get aid on that as well. Reading Plus is an example of an instructional package that you can purchase. Castle Learning, it's a support for classroom instruction. Virtual field trips and video conferencing. These are all the things that you can use, that you'll use to tie together all of your functions. Scott, that's got to sound familiar. Jerry Lee and Scott, in your setting, that must sound familiar, right?
Yes, everything we do has to be through a BOCES COSER. Number one, financially, and number two, it is, they talked about the one-stop shop for Frontline, but many things that they offer, it really condenses everything you do so that your functions can be more functional, if you will.
Yeah, here's an example. Jerry, I'm sorry, Jerry Lee, go ahead.
I was just going to mention what you said in terms of a district advocating and a BOCES picking it up. We see that all the time. So we have 2 BOCES in our area, and we were interested in going with Frontline, but our BOCES was interested in another product. So our other BOCES picked it up for us, and we went through a COSER through them. So we were able to use both of them.
Thanks for saying that, Jerry Lee, because that's called cross-contracting. and you can cross-contract with other BOCES if your BOCES doesn't provide it. It's a beautiful system, and you need to know how to work it. You need to know how to work it, which is why I took you there. Can we talk about what a COSER is and how it impacts us as administrators? Certainly. COSER stands for Cooperative Service Agreement, and there are numerous COSERs already on the books. And the COSERs show up in the BOCES service directory. And it's everything from what we just looked at to you can purchase a space in special education classrooms that are in your district or out of district. You can purchase Section 6 required coach training through BOCES. You can purchase textbook loans. You can purchase hundreds of things. But BOCES is not the one who says a COSER is legitimate, Kobe. Only Albany can say a COSER is legitimate. So there are dozens of current COSERs on the books found in the service directory. That's where I went a moment ago. And those have been approved by Albany at the request of a BOCES on behalf of partnering school districts. One school district cannot be in a COSER. There cannot be a COSER for one district. It has to be shared. All right? And once Albany approves it, it goes into the service directory. And if you subscribe to it and purchase it, then you pay for it up front in year X, and then you get your aid for it in year X plus 1. And then if you're smart and you've got like a 78% for poor districts, 78% return on your investment, 78 cents on every dollar you spend with BOCES, you can find a way to have a stream of revenue each year. So you purchase software, and as long as you keep $10,000 in software, next year you get $7,800 back. And then you only have to put in, what, $2,200 to get back up to $10,000. So you can always keep replenishing that pot, and that money is available to you by leveraging BOCES COSERs. Kobe, got it?
Yeah, so that's kind of, I hear the term all the time, BOCES aidable. That's kind of the same thing. That's the term that I hear down here a lot. If it's BOCES aidable, you get that percentage back.
Yeah, your first comments didn't come through. You were really loud, but BOCES aidable. And your district gets returned financially. Scott's got it right. What part, Tanya?
No, I just couldn't hear the part earlier because it sounded like wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. It did, Kobe. Your sound was
a day.
Try it now. Go ahead and repeat it.
I said, so that's BOCES aidable. That's the term that we use.
Yeah. All right. Now, I'm going to go quickly through this, all right, so we don't have to come back to it. These are the readings. You're going to read about this. This next step is when you in-house have to choose software, say instructional software, and you want to send it through your own decision-making process. That's what these readings are about. So here's the step to evaluate the value of educational technology. I'm not going to go through it because you're going to do it in the reading, all right? So that's why this is important. And in fact, this is what BOCES goes through. But BOCES doesn't do this for every piece of software. You might find that you need to do this. This is a lot like textbook review, all right? Then I had another one, a checklist for selecting educational technologies. You just don't pull it off the shelves. You have to have a system for making sure you get the big bang for the buck, all right? Here's a way to do this. And notice, interaction, organization issues, networking, security, and privacy, systems-wide. All right. Unfortunately, teachers don't always think about everything that has to be paid attention to, like costs, interaction, organizational issues, networking, privacy. They don't think of that. They just like the bells and whistles. You will read about this and write a reflection for me on each of these